بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, Professor, Chairman, and SAIS panels, and my fellow presenters. My name is Samah Isa. I'm a Vice Principal at Flexi Academy, Florida, USA, and Ontario, Canada, and I'm a Master's student at Faculty of Sharia and Law, University Science Islam, Malaysia. Today, I'm going to briefly present my topic, which is titled The Responsibility to Protect Doctrine in the Context of the Atrocity Crimes in the Occupied Palestinian Territories. Does it apply? As for the first of all, the introductory background to my topic, the responsibility to protect has actually emerged for the purpose of preventing mass atrocities from occurrence and protecting populations subjected to them upon the aftermath of a series of humanitarian crises in the 90s, and most specifically the Rwandan genocide in 1994. The responsibility to protect, while being an idea that emerged, has been shortly adopted by the United Nations General Assembly by overwhelming majority voting of member states in 2005. So what is entailed in the responsibility to protect? The responsibility to protect consists of three pillars as considered by the literature, by so many scholars. The pillar one states that each state has a primary responsibility to protect its own, its population from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. And pillar two, that all other states are obliged to assist the state to carry out its responsibility. And in pillar three, when deliberately or weakly the state fails to do so, then the international community has a responsibility to protect through both, at first, the non-coercive diplomatic ways and different non-coercive methods, and in extreme situations as a last resort through the Security Council, or upon the Security Council pre-approval, it would be a military intervention. As for sure, the responsibility to protect has generated a lot of heated debate, more specifically upon the pillar three, and more even extensively upon the case of Libya in 2011, which was considered the overacting, and in the other side, the inaction in situations of most or more humanitarian crises, such as the Syrian case or Myanmar and Gaza, and so on and so forth. The case of concern in our topic or in our research is one of a tremendously complicated situations that largely have been overlooked in the literature, which is the link between the responsibility to protect and the likely enduring atrocity crimes within the occupied Palestinian territories. And the studies then questioning possible applicability for protection of civilians in the occupied Palestinian territories. Namely, we are talking about the West Bank, where the apartheid and persecution crimes have been reported or claimed, and on the other side, the Gaza Strip, frequent war rounds between the resistant faction in Gaza and the Israeli forces, and also the suffocating blockade of Gaza Strip since 2005, which is the Israeli disengagement of the territories. The link between the responsibility to protect and the atrocity crimes in Palestine, and most specifically in Gaza, has been emerged for the first time in 2014, when the International Coalition for the Responsibility to Protect tried try to address the situation in the light of the responsibility to protect. And the ICRP has come up with a statement that the determining factor to the applicability of the RTP will be the legal status of Gaza Strip, which is debatable between scholars in the literature, whether it's an independent territory or still and occupied by the Israeli forces. The conclusion of the statement shows that if Gaza is occupied, then the responsibility to protect would rest between Israel and Hamas to the extent of effective control each of them has over the Gaza Strip. And on the other side, if Gaza Strip is an independent, since the disengagement of the Israeli forces in 2005, then the responsibility to protect would not be applicable, since it applies only to crises within a state borders. The statement has generated a few discussions around the conclusion of the situation. For example, we have Megan Schmidt adopted the same argument and assumed that considering the legal status would be central to deciding on the applicability. Similarly, James Rodolph stated that neither Israel nor Gaza is engaging in excessive force against its own population, and therefore considered that the R2P seems not applicable. Similarly, as well, that by David Reef, while acknowledged that there is no clear-cut answer to the R2P, however, R2P only applies to intrastate wars within one state borders. On the other side, Dr. Aiden found that despite the paragraph 138 and was directly indicating to the state internal responsibility, the other article doesn't show the same. And similarly, Simon Adams, which is the executive manager at the Global Coalition of the Responsibility to Protect, stated that at the end, R2P applies everywhere and all the time, has also been indicated by Ban Ki-moon himself. The discussion has showed really contradictions deeply, as if the debate even went to the heart of the responsibility to protect itself, to the scope of work. The contradiction shows gray areas that is in need for more analyzing to get a clear-cut answer to the question of the responsibility to protect applicability when it comes to intrastate forces, such as the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. And through this study, a vigorous analysis of the responsibility to protect scope, setting the position in international law and critically assessing the so-called R2P's inapplicability in interstate crisis will be of high productivity, not only for preventing or halting atrocity crimes within Palestinian territories and other interstate crises, but also for better and accurate understanding of the principle of the responsibility to protect itself. So therefore, the aim of the study is to determine whether or not the responsibility to protect will be applicable for the protection of civilians in Palestinian territories. Briefly, the questions should be, what is the responsibility to protect doctrine, its scope and limitation under international law? The objective will be to define the doctrine, trace its background, emergence, and adoption, set its boundaries and limitations. Question number 2, does the responsibility to protect apply in interstate crisis? The objective will be to investigate the extent of the responsibility to protect applicability in interstate crisis. And finally, how the responsibility to protect doctrine can be possibly applied in the occupied Palestinian territories, West Bank and Gaza Strip. The objective will be to determine the applicability of the responsibility to protect as adopted in 2005 namely in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The methodology will be relying on the doctrinal legal research into the R2P, analyzing how developed, adopted, and analyzing of Articles 138 and 139, and to clearly clarify rules ambiguity, position them in a coherent and logical structure, and drawing a clear conclusion to the study. The literature review has been listed in 3 subheadings: the emergence of the R2P, the R2P and the international law, and the R2P and the occupied Palestinian territories. And the conclusion was that there was a clear scarcity of research on the responsibility to protect the applicability for protected populations, crimes resulting from an international conflict, such as the case of the Palestine. And the examples shows that a controversy that clearly unfold gray areas in understanding the R2P and its scope of work. The scope of our research will be the R2P nature, the scope of work, the limitation of the R2P, the background, the present, the legal basis, and the correlation to the international humanitarian law. However, it comes with limitations as well, as so many topics are actually relevant to the same, but will be excluded for the purpose of the research. The significance, I have been listed it in the global level, the academic level, and the local level, shortly and briefly sharing the awareness and protecting populations in Gaza Strip and West Bank. For the purpose of the timing, I would like to thank you so much for allowing me to provide the presentation, and I appreciate your guidance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.